Chapter 837. I didn't expect you to comprehend the rules of sword. Dao Xian coughed and said, "Don't worry. I've lost, so I'll give you the core power. But I'm curious. You've just entered the heavenly saint realm. How can you comprehend the rules of sword? You know about the rules of sword?" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi could not help but become curious. Soon after, he slightly nodded his head. Dao Xian was indeed one of the top 10 Starry Sky geniuses. He even knew about the rules of sword. Ordinary people wouldn't know what the rules of sword were until they reached the absolute saint realm. How can I not know? Dao Xian coughed violently again. His face was flushed, and he was extremely weak. Dao Xian was strong. He could clash with the rules of sword to such an extent with his divine thought. If his martial arts cultivation wasn't too weak, and his physique wasn't strong enough to withstand the explosion of the divine thought, he wouldn't have lost so quickly. He was a genius. If he hadn't met Lin Yi, he wouldn't have been defeated even if he had met Xian Ji and Helian Yuyan. Buzz. Dao Xian was able to accept his loss. After shouting at the crowd, he put his right hand into his chest. The next moment, his divine thought bloomed and took the core power out of his body. His physique was too weak. Therefore, he didn't use the usual method to merge and absorb the core power. Instead, he merged the core power with his heart. You know what's good for you? Seeing that Dao Xian had taken out the core power, Lin Yi didn't continue to attack. He took the core power and walked toward Helian Yuyin and Fairy Xuanji. A sharp aura radiated from the core power in his hand. I didn't expect your strength to improve so quickly. Helian Yuyin and Fairy Xuanji shook their heads and didn't say anything more. They immediately took out the core power in their bodies. Soon, another core power appeared and fell into Lin Ye's hand. Even Lin Ye's breathing couldn't help but quicken. The onlookers stared at Lin Yi even more. There were 5 core powers in total, and all of them were in Lin Ye's body. They were curious about what would happen. Of course, they were more curious about how Lin Yi could break through to the next realm with the help of the core power. "Senior Sister Xuanji, please protect me for a moment." Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi pressed the 2 core powers into his body. Boom! Boom! The moment the 2 cores entered Lin Ye's body, the other 3 cores in Lin Ye's body were affected and began to go berserk. In the next moment, pure saint energy and divine telekinesis gushed out of Lin Ye's heart and dantian like a tidal wave, wreaking havoc in his meridians. The saint energy crashed into the bottleneck and increased Lin Ye's strength. SSSST. Many elements appeared and emitted light. They intersected and reflected on each other, illuminating the forest. It was as if a deity had appeared. This is the core powers of 5 core powers. He's absorbing them all by himself. Junior brother Lin, he's going against the natural order. I reckon that his strength will surpass senior sister and the rest this time. It's terrifying. I heard that junior brother Lin has just entered Cebu Gakuen for half a year. He hasn't even entered the inner yard. How can he surpass senior sister Xuanji? Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. They looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of shock and admiration. Cough, cough. Not far away, Dao Xian kept coughing. He was extremely weak, and his aura was weak. However, he looked at Lin Yi with curiosity. This lad can increase his strength by so much in such a short time. He must have great luck. Phew, looks like father was right. Shaking his head, Dao Xian's expression turned serious. He released his divine sense and enveloped the surrounding divine sky sect disciples. In an instant, several figures that were approaching Lin Yi were intercepted. Those few figures turned around and looked at Dao Yin, their faces full of astonishment. Come back. We, the Divine Sky Sect, are not sore losers. As the indifferent voice sounded, the corners of the few figures' mouths twitched. They had no choice but to return to Dao Xian's side. However, Dao Yin didn't notice that the eyes those figures looked at him with were already filled with resentment and bewilderment. More than that, they were disappointed. Time passed by slowly as Lin Yi cultivated. Soon, Lin Ye's realm had broken through from the early Heaven Sage realm to the late Heaven Sage realm. As for his divine sense, It had increased to level 66. This kind of improvement speed could be said to be incomparably terrifying. One should know that Hellion Yin, who was ranked second among the 10 Starry Sky geniuses, was only in the intermediate Heaven Sage realm. Lin Yi had broken through from the Great Sage realm to the late Heaven Sage realm. This leap in strength was too terrifying. In fact, no one dared to imagine it. Hiss! This little guy's aura, coupled with his strange and unpredictable means, I'm afraid that other than Yin Feng, no one could be compared to him. How did such a monster like him suddenly appear among the younger generation? Hellion Yin shook her head slightly and completely cut off all other thoughts. I'm not sure either. Fairy Xuanji looked at Lin Yi and suddenly laughed. This is good too. Sibu Gakuan, I'm finally not the only one holding up the fort. Yes, with him, you'll have an easier time. How about it? I know that there's a relic in Theta Scarabii that might be able to greatly increase your strength. Are you willing to go with me? Hellion Yin's eyes lit up as she looked at Fairy Xuanji. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Fairy Xuanji sighed. I keep feeling that there are more things waiting for me. TSK, can't you just throw it to this little guy? Hellion Yin rolled her eyes at Xuanji. Boom, boom, boom. Just as Fairy Xuanji and Hellion Yin were talking, a violent Saint power pressure fell on everyone's hearts, causing their breathing to quicken. In the next moment, Lin Yi leaped up. His body shone with a 5-colored radiance as he floated toward the array in the air. What's going on? Wait a minute. Doesn't that array require the core power to be unlocked? Why is it suddenly sucking him up? Buzz. A strange power bloomed. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Lin Yi's body shone with a 5-colored radiance as he slowly sank into the huge pentagram array. Soon, the formation became illusory and disappeared from the crowd's line of sight. Wait, where is junior brother Lin? What's going on? Everyone was shocked and looked around, but they could not find anything. They could only wait silently. Genius memorized this site's address in a second. Human mobile version reading website. Chapter 838. Within the pentagram formation, Lin Yi slowly awoke, and his consciousness sank into his body. The moment Lin Yi opened his eyes, the core energy in his body flowed to his 4 limbs and shone brightly. A great deal of power emanated from his body and floated within the formation. At the same time, the figure in the depths of the space approached Lin Yi. Not long after, the figure arrived in front of Lin Yi and slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, the radiance of the entire pentagram array dimmed. In the next moment, various energies, including Lin Yi's core energy, saint energy, and divine thought power, surged into the giant figure's body. Boom, boom, boom. His body shone brightly, and the 5-colored light in his body intertwined and flashed. Lin Yi did not panic, nor did he refuse. He allowed the saint energy and divine thought power in his body to flow. Biluo did not stop him. On the contrary, every time Lin Yi was about to be exhausted, she would sprinkle the origin source, heavenly water, to replenish Lin Yi's saint energy. This situation continued for an hour before the figure finally stopped absorbing the energy. Boom! Suddenly, a purer energy than before flowed out of the figure's body and into Lin Yi's body. Rumble! The powerful energy cleansed Lin Yi's meridians and increased his strength, and it also made the spiritual qi in the 9-fold space much more abundant. The chaotic divine tree and origin source heavenly water were nourished and evolved rapidly. Especially the chaotic divine tree, it grew stronger. 15 minutes later, the energy was completely digested by Lin Yi. That figure immediately revealed a look of surprise and bewilderment as he sized up Lin Yi. Not bad. Little fellow, there are actually so many strange existences in your body. His voice was like thunder, echoing in Lin Yi's ears. Lin Yi raised his head and looked at the figure. He quickly confirmed his identity. Inside his body, there were 5 completely different types of power of laws, but they were extremely smooth, and he had completely fused them together. Although the aura was not strong, Lin Yi believed that the person's strength was definitely not inferior to Theta Scarabee's. Ordinary absolute saints were like ants in front of them. The prophecy was right. The Son of Heaven will come here and awaken me. The figure said in a deep voice, "Young man, what do you want? Other than the core power, I can give you everything you want, including the essence of us, Pentagod's elves." As the King of Elves spoke, he raised his hand, and a scroll appeared. This is the 5 spirits divine art. As long as you cultivate it, you can also fuse the power of the 5 laws together. In addition, there are also divine sense treasures and supreme sacred weapons here. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 10 treasures appeared and floated in front of Lin Yi. "Are they all for me?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and glanced over. He was surprised. Needless to say, the 5 spirits divine art was comparable to a god-level cultivation technique. As for the divine sense treasures and supreme sacred weapons, they were almost all at the peak of the supreme sacred weapons and were not much worse than divine items. "Of course, but you can only take 5. The King of Elves said in a deep voice, "Although I am very grateful that you have revived me, the demons are not dead yet. They will attack the divine land again sooner or later. I must leave enough strength to defend this continent." 5 is also good. Lin Yi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was extremely excited. 5 supreme, sacred weapons that were comparable to divine items. That was a great harvest. If he gave them to Fairy Xuanji, Shun Qingyun, and the others, he might be able to create more powerhouses in a short period of time. "Wait a minute." Biluo's voice suddenly rang out. "Lin Yi, can you do me a favor?" "What?" Hearing Biluo's sudden seriousness, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. "Give up those supreme, sacred weapons in exchange for an array." Biluo's voice was urgent. "This array can stabilize one's soul forever. If it can be used on me, I only need to find another body and a divine cultivation method that is comparable to the divine level to revive me." "Revive?" Hearing this, Lin Yi's breathing suddenly quickened. Biluo's strength was not weak. If she could be revived, it would be a great help to Lin Yi. However, if he wanted to revive Biluo, the price was too high, wasn't it? Giving up 5 supreme sacred weapons in exchange for an array? He could not be sure. For a moment, Lin Yi could not help but hesitate. During this period of time, the news about the appearance of the demons had become more frequent. Lin Yi wanted to enhance everyone's strength as much as possible. Otherwise, he would have agreed to it long ago. "Forget it. Even if the demons appear, so what? I have to revive you first." After a long while, Lin Yi gritted his teeth and looked up at the King of Elves. He said in a deep voice, "Can I give up these supreme sacred weapons in exchange for something else?" "Oh, what is it?" Hearing this, the King of Elves could not help but be surprised. Those were 5 supreme sacred weapons, which were at the peak of the ultimate grade. Many absolute saints could not resist the temptation when they saw them. Now, Lin Yi had rejected him directly, which shocked the King of Elves. At the same time, he thought more highly of Lin Yi. Only those who could stay true to themselves and resist temptation could become a real powerhouse. "I want the array around here." Lin Yi pointed at the pentagram array and said, "Can you teach me this array? Or just seal in my body?" "Are you talking about the lost array formation?" Blinking his eyes, the King of Elves suddenly laughed out loud. "Ha ha, good lad, you have good taste. This array can protect one's soul and ensure that it will never perish. Obtaining this array is equivalent to obtaining an immortal body. Although the conditions for resurrection are very harsh, there is still a way out. This array is the core of the pentagram Elves tribe. I should not teach it to you." Hearing this, Lin Yi frowned and his heart skipped a beat. "However, now that the demons are about to return and you are the son of heavenly providence, it is not a big deal to teach it to you. Perhaps you can make use of this array and the auspicious signs to create another miracle." The corners of the King of Elves' mouth curled up. He suddenly pointed his finger and pressed it on Lin Yi's forehead. Lin Yi, who was surprised that he even knew about the auspicious signs, suddenly froze on the spot. In the next moment, various mysterious forces poured into Lin Ye's mind. After a while, there seemed to be stars moving in Lin Ye's eyes. The king of elves, who was slightly tired, took a few steps back. With a wave of his right hand, the 5 spiritual spirits' main chapter fell into Lin Ye's body. The king of elves grinned and said, "Lad, I have given you what you deserve. It is time for me to go back. Before I leave, I will give you a piece of advice. Try to improve your strength as soon as possible. This world is about to change." Ha ha ha. Ha ha. In the midst of his laughter, the king of elves disappeared in a flash of light. At the same time, many space cracks appeared around them and suddenly sucked Lin Yi into the space cracks. Chapter 839. Rumble. The space crack exploded and almost everyone was sucked into it. When everyone woke up again, they were surprised to find that they were on a huge plain. The surrounding ground was dry and cracked as if it had been burned by fire. Damn it, what is this place? Everyone was shocked and quickly got up. But soon, they were excited again. We are back. Ha ha. We are finally back. Some of the local cultivators of the desolate god realm were overjoyed and quickly left. With their current strength, entering the 5 spirits god ruins was simply asking for a beating, causing them to suffer greatly. Therefore, they did not even think about the treasures and just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Lin Yi floated in the air and looked at the people on the ground. Soon, he found Shun Qingyun, Helian Yuyin, Fairy Xuanji, and the rest. In a flash, Lin Yi came to the side of Fairy Xuanji and the rest. He glanced at them nervously, and when he found that Shun Qingyun and the rest were safe, he heaved a sigh of relief. Humph, you rascal, where did you go? Shun Qingyun walked to Lin Yi and glared at Lin Yi angrily, showing her 2 small canine teeth. Of course, to solve this relic. After rubbing Shun Qingyun's head and messing up her hair, the angry Shun Qingyun could only tidy up her hair and ignore Lin Yi. At the same time, Lin Yi said to Fairy Xuanji and Helian Yuyin, "I have already obtained the general chapter of the 5 spirits god technique. When do you 2 need it?" "If it is the 5 spirits god technique, I am not in a hurry." Helian Yuyin yawned and waved her hand. She said casually, "You 2 go back first. When the higher-ups are done, I will ask Fairy Xuanji for it." "Yes, your elders are here as well. It's time for me to leave." Glancing from the corner of her eye, Helian Yuyin shrugged her shoulders and left with her numerous disciples. Before they left, the girl beside Helian Yuyin shot a deep glance at Lin Yi. All the way until now, she still had not reacted. Lin Yi's strength was actually so powerful. Seeing Helian Yuyin leave so straightforwardly, the corner of Lin Yi's mouth suddenly twitched. This was the 5 spirits divine technique. That was a divine will cultivation technique that was comparable to a divine level divine will cultivation technique. Countless absolute saints would go crazy over it. Helian Yuyin actually didn't care at all. Lin Yi didn't know whether to say that Helian Yuyin had a big heart or that she trusted them too much. However, before Lin Yi could ponder any further, a powerful pressure had already descended upon him. Lin Yi and the others raised their heads to look, and all of them revealed joyful expressions. It was Theta Scarabii. With Theta Scarabii around, their safety was guaranteed. Before Theta Scarabii came, the people from Divine Sky Sect left at an extremely fast speed, especially Dao Yin. Even though his body was severely injured, he still chose not to stay. Noticing this, Lin Ye's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but feel curious. In this place, no matter how many grievances they had, they wouldn't erupt. Why did Dao Yin run so fast? Swoosh! Theta Scarabii landed and glanced at the crowd. She was very satisfied and said, "Not bad. Your strength has increased greatly. I guess you must have benefited a lot from the relic. Especially you, little guy." Theta Scarabii's expression didn't change. She patted Lin Ye's shoulder, and her eyes were filled with joy. She was also surprised by Lin Ye's increase in strength. However, after the surprise, she was even more ecstatic. The stronger Lin Yi was, the stronger Cebu Gakuin would be. Everyone rested for a while. Soon, Theta Scarabii led the crowd and left. Originally, Ding Fengtian wanted to leave. However, when Lin Yi said that he knew about the 3,000 ways of heaven, Ding Fengtian followed Theta Scarabei and the others and prepared to return to Cebu Gakuen. Normally, Ding Fengtian wouldn't be able to enter Cebu Gakuen. However, Lin Yi's outstanding talent had been completely revealed. How could Theta Scarabei reject his request? Therefore, the group of people returned to Cebu Gakuen in a mighty manner. Even with the existence of the teleportation formation, it still took them almost a day to return to Cebu Gakuen. After returning to Cebu Gakuen, Lin Yi and Qin Yu were released before they could enter the inner courtyard. They rushed back to the academy with Ding Fengtian. Theta Scarabei led the others back to the inner courtyard. Of course, Lin Yi and the others weren't abandoned. It was just that it wasn't time yet. Moreover, they had been away for so long. Lin Yi was the leader of the Sky Rapier sect. He had to go back and check on the development of his own force. When they returned to the courtyard, Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu hurried over to greet them. After arranging accommodations for Ding Fengtian, Lin Yi instructed the two of them to do some things. Then, he went out again and rushed to the Sacred Depository Pavilion. Without any obstacles, Lin Yi once again arrived at the 11th level. Ahem! Chen Daoxuan's figure appeared amidst the light, coughing. Wait, your strength. Although Chen Daoxian arrived first, he was extremely sensitive. He quickly sensed that something was wrong. In a flash, he pressed down on Lin Yi's shoulders. How did your strength increase so quickly? Chen Daoxian was completely shocked. How long had it been? Lin Yi had broken through from the Saint Realm to the Heavenly Saint Realm. Lin Yi was not much weaker than him. How could he not be shocked? It's just a coincidence. Lin Yi said in a deep voice, Elder Chun, where are the 3,000 heavenly ways? Phew, since you're strong enough, I'll tell you. With a sigh, Chen Daoxian picked up the map on the table and threw it to Lin Yi. He said in a low voice, This map is the location of the 3,000 heavenly ways. The 3,000 heavenly ways are located near the Dragon Mountain between the Divine Prefecture Heavenly Domain and the St. Moon Heavenly Domain. I hope you have a safe journey. After receiving the map, Lin Yi looked at it for a moment and memorized everything on the map. In the next moment, the map burned and turned into ashes. Thank you, Elder Chun, Lin Yi said with a grin. After I get the 3,000 heavenly ways, I'll give it to you. Hee, that's good. Chen Daoxian laughed, but his laughter was a little scary. Lin Yi did not mind. After saying goodbye to Chen Daoxian, he rushed back to the courtyard. However, as soon as Lin Yi left the Sacred Depository Pavilion, he was stopped by Flawless White. Lin Yi, follow me to the inner courtyard. Flawless White's face was solemn and gloomy. What happened? Lin Yi was surprised, but Flawless White did not answer. He pulled Lin Yi and quickly flew to the inner courtyard. Following beside Flawless White, Lin Yi felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He felt cold all over, and his heart suddenly became piercingly cold. What on earth had happened that made by Wuxia, a powerful cultivator at his level, so serious? Chapter 840. No matter how Lin Yi asked, Flawless White did not reply. Instead, he looked solemn, which made Lin Yi's heart sink. After a while, Flawless White brought Lin Yi to a large hall. When he looked up, Lin Yi's breathing quickened. All the elders, including the Honorable Lord, were present in the hall. Even Theta Scarabei looked terrible. SSS, something big must have happened. D*M*. Is there a problem with the sky market? Lin Yi frowned as he thought of the sky market. Not only was there a new world in the sky market, but there were also demons in that world. If there was a problem with the sky market, it would be a disaster for the Divine Land. You are here. The Honorable Lord looked at Lin Yi and suddenly asked, Lin Yi, can you tell us everything you know about the sky market world and draw a map? Sure. Lin Yi nodded slightly and said, I just want to know if there is a problem with the transportation channel in the sky market world. That's right. The Honorable Lord sighed. There's a problem with the channel. Many people from mutated tribes came here. Although they have all been killed, the channel can no longer be covered. There will be an endless stream of people coming here. Moreover, some of the people we killed had demonic chi in their bodies. Demonic chi? Lin Yi frowned and said in surprise, "That's impossible, right? It has only been a few months. The demons can't have taken over the sky market world so quickly, right? When I was there, most of the 9 prefectures were still under the control of the human tribe." Hearing this, the Honorable Lord glanced at Lin Yi and said in a low voice, "We're not sure, but the demonic aura definitely exists." "All right." Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi didn't say anything more. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, took out a map, and began to outline it with his divine sense. While sketching the map, Lin Yi told him everything he knew. An hour later, everything about the sky market world was displayed on the map. Lin Yi finished talking about his experience. At this time, he was a little curious about the situation of his subordinates. Picking up the map, the exalted lord took a look at it, and his complexion turned even more awful. The sky market world wasn't considered small. If one included the 9 heavens, it wasn't much different from the divine continent. It would not be a small task to exterminate all of the demons in the city. That was why the High Lord's expression was so ugly. If it's just the sky market world, it doesn't seem to be enough to make all of you so serious, right? Lin Yi glanced at the crowd and suddenly realized that the 2 elders' gazes were fixed on him. Their gazes contained an ominous glint, so he asked curiously. Looking up, Lin Yi didn't flinch at all and stared straight at the 2 elders. "Humph!" Sensing Lin Yi's gaze, the 2 elders suddenly flung their sleeves and turned their heads away. As soon as he finished speaking, the rest of the elders looked at Lin Yi strangely. Even Flawless White and Theta Scarabii sighed. This made Lin Yi very curious. Flawless White and Theta Scarabii had high hopes for him, but now they were showing such an expression, which naturally made people suspicious. "Phew, I heard that you killed Dao Xian, one of the 10 starry sky geniuses in the 5 spirit god relics?" One of the elders said quietly. "Dao Xian?" Frowning slightly, Lin Yi smiled and said, "Why would I kill him? You just injured him and took the core power. Elder Theta Scarabii should be clear about this." As he spoke, Lin Yi looked at Theta Scarabii. Not only him, but all the elders also turned their gazes to Theta Scarabii. "That's right." Theta Scarabii nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, when the 5 spirit god relics ended, Dao Xian was still safe. "Died on the way?" Lin Yi suddenly said, "I knew my limits. At most, I injured him for 10 days to half a month. He was probably ambushed by others and died on the way." As he spoke, Lin Yi glanced at the elders' expressions and suddenly had a premonition. Could Dao Xian be a descendant of an elder in the academy? But if that was the case, it would be even more surprising. Why would a descendant of an elder be in the Divine Sky sect? Sigh. Although that's the case, the Divine Sky sect doesn't think so. A few elders sighed and said, "There's news that Dao Xian is dead." The Divine Sky sect is furious and wants to attack Cebu Gakuen. There's a problem. There must be a problem. Lin Yi sneered and said, "This must be a conspiracy. It's an open conspiracy." The Great Lord suddenly said, "It's an open conspiracy, but we can't say anything. No one knows exactly what happened. The Divine Sky sect already thinks that we're the culprits. No matter how we explain, they won't believe us." "That's right," some elders said in a deep voice. "Besides, why do we have to explain? Cebu Gakuen doesn't need to explain anything to others. So this war is unavoidable." The Great Lord shook his head and said, "Everyone, there's no need to say anything more. Get ready for battle. Cebu Gakuen, will never show weakness." "That's right." Many elders nodded their heads, but the way they looked at Lin Yi was still very strange. In their opinion, if Lin Yi hadn't injured Dao Xian, this wouldn't have happened. However, who could be sure about this kind of thing? If Lin Yi hadn't defeated Dao Xian, how could he have gotten the core power? How could he have gotten the treasures in the 5 spirits god relics? By the way, Lin Yi, what did you get from this trip to the 5 spirits god relics? The Honorable Lord asked again. "I got the general chapter of the 5 spirits god technique. It's a quasi-god level divine thought skill." Lin Yi hesitated for a moment, but he still chose to tell them everything. "Also, I got an array, a lost array. Lost array. Could it be the lost array of the elf tribe that has been lost for a long time? An array that can stabilize time and souls forever? When they suddenly heard the name of the formation, many of the elders were shocked. Soon after, their breathing became hurried. The lost array formation was something that was only recorded in ancient books. So it's a lost array. Maybe it'll be useful in the future. The great lord squinted his eyes and said, Lin Yi, time is running out. I'll allow you to enter the space-time hole again to practice the general chapter of the Five Spirits God technique. In addition, you can comprehend the lost array. In return, you have to set up a lost array in Cebu Gakuen. Okay, hearing this, Lin Yi agreed immediately. The space-time hole could overlap with the ninefold space and the sky pagoda. Cultivating in the space-time hole could save a lot of time. Naturally, he wouldn't refuse. After agreeing, Lin Yi walked toward the space-time hole under the lead of Flawless White. After Lin Yi left, the elders' faces darkened. End of chapter. Chapter 841. Flawless White stopped in his tracks as he approached the time void. He looked at Lin Yi with a strange look in his eyes. Elder Bai, what happened? Lin Yi was completely helpless and asked directly, Why are you looking at me like that? Do you know who Dao Xian is? Flawless White sighed. Indeed, I guessed right. Lin Yi shrugged and said in a deep voice, Could he be a descendant of Elder Theta Scarbii? That's right. Flawless White grinned and said, Is the grandson of the second elder, Dao Tian. He went to Divine Sky Sect because he had a quarrel with the elders in his family. But this time, he died in your hands. Those elders of Taoism will naturally not have a good impression of you. The second elder? The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He was shocked. He did not expect Dao Xian to have such a high status. The second elder, other than the Honorable Lord, probably had the highest seniority. Phew, so be it. Lin Yi touched his nose and said in a deep voice, The elders probably won't do anything to me. They won't do anything to you, but your life will definitely be more difficult in the future. Flawless White smiled bitterly and said, At least the elders of that faction won't like you. Forget it. Let's not talk too much. Only strength is eternal. As long as you have great strength or are useful to Cebu Gakuen, no one will dare to touch you with the Honorable Lord around. After saying that, Flawless White turned and left. Lin Yi stood rooted to the ground, but he became suspicious. Who was it that killed Dao Yin and even pushed the infamy onto him? Could it be that they just want to start a war between Divine Sky Sect and Cebu Gakuen? Phew, there's also Juyo Dragon School. Once the Divine Heaven Sect starts a war with us, I'm afraid the Juyo Dragon School won't let us off easily. If there is a great war, who will be able to benefit from it? Holy Moon Divine Sect? That's not right. The Holy Moon Divine Sect, as one of the four pinnacle forces, will definitely be involved. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, his heart full of suspicion. Wait, could it be that the person who set up the Sky Market world did it in secret? If the four great powers were to fight, we definitely wouldn't have the energy to deal with the Sky Market world. At that time, the demons would definitely be able to kill their way out of the tunnel. Once they hide in the Divine Land, it will be extremely difficult to find them again. When he suddenly thought of this, Lin Ye's expression became extremely unsightly, and he felt extremely anxious. If what he speculated was true, he was afraid that a huge disaster was waiting for the Divine Land. Forget it. Let's not worry about that for now. The most important thing now is to increase my strength. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi rushed straight into the space-time hole. After entering the space-time hole, Lin Yi activated the Celestial Pagoda, and he immediately entered the ninefold space. As soon as he entered the ninefold space, Lin Yi immediately felt something strange. In the ninefold space, the Saint power was much stronger than before. The power of law also filled the entire space. Looking up, Lin Yi was stunned. The chaotic divine tree was actually more than 10 times larger than before. Thick and dense tree branches fell with a loud rumble. Biluo sat under the tree, bathed in the power of law, blooming with radiance. From afar, she looked like a banished immortal. Xiang Rui lay at the side, the power in his body also much stronger than before. What's going on? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi was shocked. Could it be that the reverse nurturing from the Elven King's revival had evolved the ninefold space? You guessed right. Biluo said, the reverse nurturing from the Elven King not only improved the ninefold space, but also completed the evolution of the chaotic divine tree. Now, the chaotic divine tree has reached the peak of the first stage, and it can grow into a real divine item at any time. And I, with the help of the power of law of the chaotic divine tree, have also stabilized my soul. As long as the lost formation is successfully formed, after you cultivate the general chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique and find a perfect body, I can be resurrected. Speaking of this, Biluo's face was filled with joy. Biluo, if you're resurrected, what realm can you recover to? Lin Yi asked curiously. At least an upper-level absolute saint. Biluo's lips curled up. With the top-level chaotic divine tree, give me a little more time, and I can recover to the peak of this world. Sage Ruler? Hearing this, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Sage Ruler was the peak of the divine land. Yes, that's why you have to resurrect me as soon as possible. Biluo said in a low voice. With your current strength, after cultivating the general chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique and finding the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Ways, you can resurrect me. No problem. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi took out the general chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique and began to cultivate. Lin Yi knew that some people's conspiracy against the divine land had begun to emerge. If his cultivation could not keep up with the pace, perhaps the entire divine land would be destroyed. Time passed quickly as Lin Yi cultivated. The Five Spirits Divine Technique was indeed a quasi-divine technique. After cultivating for 7 months, Lin Yi had only just begun. After spending a full year, Lin Yi had successfully cultivated the Five Spirits Divine Technique. In an instant, the 5 elemental divine senses in his body merged together to form a brand new technique. Following this fusion, Lin Yi's divine sense improved rapidly. In just a dozen breaths, Lin Yi's divine sense had reached the 70th level. With such a frightening level of cultivation, he wouldn't be too far off from some of the elders. Lin Yi was quite satisfied with this. He spent another half a year to stabilize the cultivation of the Five Spirits Divine Technique. After that, Lin Yi began to comprehend the lost formation. The lost formation was indeed a formation that had been lost for tens of thousands of years. Lin Yi spent 5 years to barely reach the threshold. After that, Lin Yi tried to draw the lost formation on Biluo's body. It had to be said that Lin Yi's luck was very good. In just 2 months, Lin Yi had successfully drawn the lost formation and fixed Biluo's soul forever. At the same time, Lin Yi's martial cultivation had also broken through to the peak of the Heavenly Saint realm. After finishing his cultivation, Lin Yi directly exited the ninefold space. When he came out of the space-time hole, there was no one. Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. In the past, once he finished his cultivation, there would be elders rushing over to pick him up. But this time, no elders came. Could it be that something had happened? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi's divine sense spread out in all directions. Soon, he found that in a corner, there was a strong fluctuation of saint power and a nauseating aura. Oh no, demons are attacking. End of chapter. Chapter 842. With a slight change in his expression, Lin Yi did not hesitate at all. He quickly got up and rushed toward the source of the fluctuation. After breaking through to the peak Heavenly Saint tier, Lin Yi's speed was extremely fast. In less than half an hour, a strong fluctuation of saint energy had appeared around Lin Yi. As he looked over, he could vaguely see a lot of black gas lingering around. Boom, boom, boom. Violent fluctuations bloomed as some black figures rushed out and flew into the distance. However, before they could even land on the ground, several hundred attacks landed on them. Hundreds of elders floated in the air, controlling the situation and destroying the black figures. Sea of flames. With a soft shout, Lin Xinye's mind moved, and the power of his divine sense suddenly turned into a sea of fire. The scorching flames caused the entire space to burn. Crackle, beep, beep, beep. Under the high temperature, the black gas did not resist at all. It was instantly burned to ashes and dissipated in the air. Someone else is here? Sensing this, the numerous elders turned around one after another. However, when they realized that it was Lin Yi, a surprised expression appeared on their faces. After all, Lin Yi was an outer-yard student. Many elders had not seen him before. Lin Yi, you've finally come out. Fortunately, some of the more powerful elders from the outer yard were called over. When they saw Lin Yi, they said, Elder Bai has said that if you're here, you can go straight into the cave. What? Hearing this, the surrounding elders' faces changed drastically. They immediately looked at Lin Yi curiously. Even with their strength, flawless white and theta scarabee eye did not allow them to enter the cave. Lin Yi looked like a student. Although his cultivation level was high and he was a peak heavenly saint, he should not be able to enter the cave, right? However, they did not dare to say anything. They were just shocked. After all, Flawless White's orders were still very useful. Moreover, with Theta Scarabee Eye's guarantee, they did not dare to provoke Lin Yi. If Lin Yi really had power and influence, they would be finished. Elder wants you to go in? Lin Yi was also stunned. However, he did not think too much about it. Immediately, he gathered the power of his divine sense and surrounded himself as he charged into the cave. Buzz! The power of divine sense was released, and like a spinning shuttle, it dispersed the surrounding black gas. Very quickly, Lin Ye's figure also disappeared into the cave. This little fellow's strength is not weak. When did such a young genius appear in the inner court? It seems that even Xuanji's realm is inferior to his. Noticing this, the elders were all extremely shocked. Even for them, it would take some effort to break through the black gas. However, Lin Yi was able to break through the black gas in an instant, which shocked them. Oh, he's not an inner court genius. A few elders who knew Lin Yi laughed bitterly. This student has only entered Cebu Gakuen for half a year. What? He has entered Cebu Gakuen for half a year, and he has such strength? Genius, he is a true genius. Hearing this, all the elders were shocked beyond words. They looked at Lin Yi's disappearing figure with strange looks in their eyes. After Lin Yi charged into the cave, he realized that the black gas inside had become more and more pervasive. Hundreds of figures, filled with dense black gas, charged toward Lin Yi. It's really demonic chi. Feeling the black gas, Lin Yi's expression turned grave. He immediately believed what the Honorable Lord had said. Indeed, the Sky Market world had been almost completely occupied by the demons. This surprised Lin Yi. The Sky Market world was so big, and there was even a world above the 9 heavens. How could it have been completely conquered by the demons in just half a year? Lin Yi did not know that the flow of time in the Divine Land and the Sky Market world was different. Half a year had passed in the Divine Land, but in the Sky Market world, hundreds of years had passed. Under the constant attacks of the demons, it was a miracle that the Sky Market world could hold on for hundreds of years. Roar! After discovering Lin Yi, the black figures were like wild beasts. They let out hoarse roars and charged toward Lin Yi. Swoosh! However, before they could charge out, dozens of sharp Saint Power arrows pierced through the air and pierced through the black figures. Chi, chi, chi. The arrows shot into their bodies and shone with a holy light. In the next moment, they dissipated like snow under the sun. Lin Yi was slightly shocked. He raised his head and looked over. What he saw was an elder with a white beard. Lin Yi, the Honorable Lord wants you to follow me. That elder coldly snorted. His body flashed, and he once again charged into the cave. Lin Yi didn't hesitate at all and followed him. Along the way, Lin Yi met many more black figures. Some of the auras of the black figures even made Lin Yi feel pressured. However, those black silhouettes were simply too weak when compared to the elders. The elder casually shot an arrow. Many arrows exploded and quickly melted the black figures. Realizing this, Lin Yi finally understood how powerful Cebu Gakuen was. Almost every one of the 20 elders was an absolute saint. Lin Yi guessed that some of the elders who were ranked at the top were upper absolute saints. Otherwise, Cebu Gakuen wouldn't be one of the 4 top forces and make the Divine Sky Sect and Holy Moon Divine Sect so afraid of them. As he thought, Lin Yi was escorted by the elder to the depths of the cave. The originally pure lotus was now shining with black light. One figure after another rushed out of the lotus. Many of the black figures had great power. As soon as they came out, they exploded. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful ripples exploded. The Honorable Lord, Theta, Scarabii, Tao Heaven, Flawless White, and the other elders were all bathed in blood and fighting. They looked exhausted, but they did not slack off. Almost every time they attacked, dozens of black shadows were beaten into nothingness. Even so, there were still many black silhouettes that rushed out. They were strong, but this area was too big. They couldn't care too much. Great, you've finally finished cultivating. Sensing Lin Ye's arrival, the Honorable Lord let out a long sigh of relief. He quickly asked, "Did you successfully comprehend the lost formation during this seclusion? The lost formation is useful for this?" Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked. He immediately recalled the description of the lost technique. Soon, Lin Ye's expression became serious. The lost formation could seal everything. Naturally, it could seal the passageway. However, this was only a temporary solution. It couldn't completely destroy the passageway. If it encountered the top demons, or had been here for a long time, the lost formation would still be destroyed. Of course, the Honorable Lord said in a low voice, "After 10 breaths, we'll suppress these black figures. Can you seal the passageway?" "Okay." Lin Xiu narrowed his eyes. With a thought, a large amount of saint energy was released. A pentagram formation had already quietly appeared in this space. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Human Mobile Version Website. M. Chapter 843. Seal it. Soon, 10 breaths had passed. The Great Lord and the elders unleashed their power at the same time. Their powerful strength was like the holy sun, suppressing all the black gas in the cave. "Lost array, seal it." Lin Yi squinted his eyes and clasped his hands together. In an instant, the lost array shone and sealed the entire lotus. Boom, boom, boom. The holy chi filled the air, and the black gas that had yet to rush out was immediately purified by the holy chi. Chi-la, chi-la. Crisp sounds rang out continuously. A pentagram array appeared above the lotus and completely sealed the passage. Bang, bang, bang. A loud sound rang out, and the pentagram array shook a few times. Soon, there was no sound. The lotus regained its silver-white radiance, and the black gas completely dissipated. Phew, it's finally over. Seeing this, everyone was excited. Even the Great Lord heaved a sigh of relief. The black gas attacked them endlessly. Even though they were powerful, they could not withstand it. If they could not seal the passage, they would not be able to hold on for long. These demons are really terrifying. An elder sighed and said, "With our strength, it's already so difficult to resist them. What if the passage of the other 3 forces has a problem? I guess the people from the Divine Sky Sect have not arrived yet. They must have been delayed by the demons." "That's very likely." The Great Lord nodded and looked at Lin Yi. He said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to comprehend the lost array so quickly. If it's possible, you may need to seal the passage of the other 3 forces." "Sure." Lin Yi nodded and chuckled. "Coincidentally, I have to make a trip to the Divine Prefecture Heavenly Domain and the St. Moon Heavenly Domain to look for a cultivation technique." "All right, pack up. We are also heading to the St. Moon Heavenly Domain." The Great Lord said in a deep voice, "The St. Moon Heavenly Domain is our ally. We must help them. In addition, the rest of you, head to the Divine Sky Sect. Even if they want to deal with us, we can't sit idly by." As soon as he finished speaking, some of the elders' expressions immediately turned ugly. Theta Scarabee's faction, in particular, had gloomy expressions. Dao Yin could be said to have died in the hands of the Divine Heaven sect. So how could they have a good impression of him? Forget it. Dao Tan, Theta Scarabee, follow me to the Saint Moon Heavenly Domain. Flawless White, Long Hao, go to the Divine Prefecture Celestial Domain. Seeing that many elders had begun to discuss, Lin Yi also quietly withdrew. He exited the cave dwelling and swiftly hurried towards the outer academy. This time, Lin Yi still had to go out. After finding the 3,000 Heaven Dao, he would probably have to run back and forth to the other 3 heavenly realms. It would be very difficult for him to return. After returning to his residence, Lin Yi ordered everything and ordered Silent Soul to go to Sunset City to pick up Luo Bingyue and the others. Right now, there was no telling when the crisis of the demons would erupt. With Luo Bingyue and the others outside, Lin Yi was a little worried. After giving his orders, Lin Yi brought Ding Fengtian and hurried towards the teleportation formation. However, just as they arrived at the teleportation formation, Lin Yi was surprised to find that Flawless White and Shun Xinyan were already waiting in front of the formation. Hee, I knew that you wouldn't stay in the academy so peacefully. Shun Xinyan looked at Lin Yi with a smile. Flawless White also smiled and said, Our great master said that after you are done with your business, try your best to go to the Saint Moon Heavenly Domain or the Divine Prefecture Celestial Domain. Anything else? Lin Yi shrugged and said helplessly, The lost formation consumed a lot of my energy. It was a little dangerous for me to set up a few formations in a row. Don't worry. I will give you all the benefits that you deserve. Flawless White sighed and said, This time, I am going to the Divine Heaven sect. There may be danger. If we can't resist them, Lin Yi, I can only leave the ceiling of the passageway to you. Your strength is still a little weak. You need to improve as soon as possible. Hearing this, Lin Yi was speechless. Shen Xingyun also looked surprised. Lin Yi's improvement in strength was already very terrifying. If this was considered slow, the rest of the people in the world would have to jump off a building. There was no other way. Although Lin Yi's strength improved quickly, the people he was going to face were also very strong. His current strength could not keep up with them. I will work hard to improve my strength. Lin Yi nodded heavily. Go, I believe in you. Flawless White smiled and looked at Lin Yi. When Lin Yi, Shun Xingyun, and Ding Fengtian disappeared into the formation, Flawless White sighed. He had a premonition that this parting would be an eternal one. When the teleportation formation was activated, Lin Yi and the rest stepped on the ground again. They were already at the edge of the St. Martial Sky Mountain. This time, there was no elder leading them. They could not go to the other heavenly regions directly. They could only fly. Fortunately, Lin Yi and the rest had reached the heavenly saint realm. Although Shun Qingyun had not broken through, she also had the strength of a heavenly saint. Therefore, they did not look for any flying spiritual pets. They followed the map and rushed to the area between the Saint Moon Realm and the Divine Land Realm. After flying for half a month and killing countless people who didn't know their place, Lin Ye's group of 3 finally arrived at the Dragon Mountain. Dragon Mountain, as the name suggested, was a mountain range that looked like a coiled dragon lying on top of the mountain range. There were many relics in Dragon Mountain. Since it was located between the 2 heavenly regions, many cultivators would go to Dragon Mountain to train. When Lin Yi and the rest arrived, there were many people in Dragon Mountain. Near the Dragon Mountain, there was a huge city. After looking at Dragon Mountain for a while, Lin Yi hesitated for a while and decided to go into the city to rest. When they arrived at Dragon City, some guards stopped Lin Yi and the rest and asked them to pay the toll. Lin Yi did not argue with them. After paying the toll, they entered the city. It had to be said that the facilities in Dragon City were very complete. There were all kinds of places. Lin Yi and the rest found a hotel and stayed there. They began to inquire about Dragon Mountain. Lin Yi wanted to make sure that he was the only one who knew about the 3,000 Heavenly Path relics. After looking at the information for 2 days, Lin Yi was relieved. The rest of the people came because of the other relics in Dragon Mountain or because they heard about Dragon Mountain. No one knew about the 3,000 Heavenly Path relics. After confirming this, Lin Yi rested for a few days. After the three of them recovered to their peak state, they set off for Dragon Mountain. End of chapter. Chapter 844. Dragon Mountain was very famous. Even though Lin Yi and the other two had been waiting for a long time, there were still thousands of people who came to Dragon Mountain every day. Seeing this, Lin Yi did not want to wait any longer. He left the city and rushed into the mountains. However, Lin Yi did not know that not long after they entered the mountains, hundreds of figures descended from the sky. The leader of the group was a young man. He looked indifferent, but the aura in his body was as deep as the sea. It was unfathomable. Beside him, there were many figures. The weakest among them was at the Great Sage Realm. As soon as this group of people appeared, they completely controlled Dragon Mountain and prohibited others from entering. At first, some people resisted. However, when they were thrown out without any resistance, they panicked and did not dare to say anything. Not only that, but they also went deep into the mountains and cleared out some of the cultivators who were exploring. Of course, Lin Yi and the other two did not know about this. According to the clues on the map, they walked into a secret path and rushed toward the ruins where the 3,000 great ways of heaven were located. For hours later, Lin Yi and the other two appeared in front of a pile of ruins. This is the place where the 3,000 great ways of heaven are hidden. Looking at the ruins, Ding Feng Tian could not help but frown. This mountain was exactly the same as the one on the map. However, looking at the ruins around him, Ding Feng Tian still could not believe it. In his impression, all the places that contained mysterious treasures were basically luxurious palaces or mysterious auras. However, this pile of ruins was especially shabby. How could there be a cultivation technique that was comparable to the divine level? Not only Ding Feng Tian, but Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun were also very surprised. It looks like it's here. After looking at the map, Lin Yi stepped into the ruins and kept looking around. No, there is a rich spiritual qi here. There must be something wrong. I'm right. Sensing the rich spiritual qi, Lin Yi's lips curled into a smile. He was instantly sure. Then how do we get in? Ding Feng Tian looked around at the ruins, his face full of confusion. Even if it was a relic, there should be an entrance, right? Find the entrance. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi waved his hand, and the three of them split up to search for the entrance. After searching for 2 hours, Lin Yi and the other two didn't find anything. Under the ruins, there was no cave, nor was there any hidden space. Frowning, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel conflicted. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi drew a line in the air with his index finger. Spatial divine runes erupted, instantly enveloping the entire area. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The power of space exploded, causing the surrounding space to distort. Broken fences and broken walls began to crumble. Could it be that we found the wrong place? Ding Feng Tian said with a wry smile. There are no traps or entrances around here. How do we get in? Or is it in the sky? As he spoke, Ding Feng Tian looked up into the sky. In the sky? Hearing this, Lin Yi looked up. His eyes flashed as he scanned the sky. However, there was still nothing in the sky. Damn it, what's going on? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and was puzzled. Chun Daoxian and the others had been to this relic before. There was no reason why they couldn't enter. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Lin Yi thought of a possibility. Since this was the relic of the 3,000 ways of heaven, did he have to reveal the power of the divine will of the 3,000 ways of heaven to stimulate the relic and reveal the entrance? With this thought, Lin Yi immediately activated the power of his divine will and prepared to try. Da-da-da. However, before Lin Yi could try, a series of footsteps sounded. Who's there? Hearing these voices, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and Ding Feng Tian were shocked. They quickly turned around and saw hundreds of figures rushing towards them from afar. The leader was shrouded in a silvery white light. He rushed over at lightning speed. So fast, Lin Yi and the other two were shocked. When they looked up again, they saw that the figure was already in front of them. In the next moment, the silvery white light dissipated and the figure was revealed. When Lin Yi and the other two saw the figure clearly, they were stunned. Their faces were full of astonishment. The figure was a young man. He looked about the same age as Lin Yi. However, his aura was extremely powerful. He was at the invincible heavenly saint realm. Furthermore, the power of his divine sense was as deep as the ocean, difficult to measure. What a powerful person! His heart tightened. Even Lin Yi could not help but have this thought. He had a feeling that unless he attacked with all his might and used the power of law, he would not be a match for the young man. Almost at the same time that Lin Yi was surprised, the young man also looked at Lin Yi in surprise. Then he chuckled and said, "Interesting. I didn't expect there to be a genius like you in the divine land." "Same to you," Lin Yi said in a low voice. "Brother, you're also very powerful." "Ha! Two young geniuses brought a sickly old man here. It seems that your goal is not simple." The young man glanced at Lin Yi and the other two with an indifferent look. In the next moment, Ding Fengtian's face was extremely ugly. He was an absolute saint expert. He had been reduced to such a state because he had been poisoned by Heavenly Slayer. Now, he was being humiliated by a young man. Naturally, he was not happy about it. "Bastard, what did you say?" Ding Fengtian's eyes turned cold. He took a step forward and glared at the young man. The saint power in his body surged like a giant tiger behind him, roaring. However, almost as soon as Ding Fengtian was about to make a move, dozens of figures behind the young man stepped forward and stared at Ding Fengtian with a piercing aura. In a split second, the strong saint power pressure fell like a mountain and pressed down on Ding Fengtian. In the blink of an eye, Ding Fengtian's face turned ghastly pale. At this moment, Ding Fengtian finally felt fear. He could not help but take a few steps back and stare at the young man and the group of people. "Who are you?" Ding Fengtian narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. His heart was full of resentment. "This place has been booked by us. Please leave." Before Lin Yi could speak, a figure walked out from behind the young man and said indifferently, "Oh, you've booked this place?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and laughed. "Interesting. This relic belongs to the Destined One. I've never heard of it. You've booked this place? You've never heard of it before. Today you'll know." Hearing this, many figures stepped forward. The saint power in their bodies surged and pressed down on Lin Yi. The young man's lips curled up as he looked at Lin Yi. He was very curious about Lin Yi's strength. End of chapter. Chapter 845. The holy aura was piercingly cold and heavy as a mountain, pressing down on Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi's cultivation level had already surpassed theirs. It did not cause any pressure to Lin Yi at all. Noticing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. With their strength, even some of the veteran heavenly saints would not be immune to their holy aura. Seeing that Lin Yi could ignore them, it was clear that he was very powerful. Especially since Lin Yi was so young, they were quite surprised and started guessing Lin Yi's identity. However, guessing was just guessing. With the power behind them, they were not afraid. They immediately leaped up and surrounded Lin Yi and Shun Qingyan. "Phew, before exploring the ruins, I should exercise my body. This is a good suggestion." The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up. He pushed Shun Qingyan to the side and looked at those people. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Although the strength of this group of people was not very strong individually, their holy aura was linked together. However, their auras were connected together, and their bodies contained a joint attack array. Lin Yi was sure that the strength of these people who used the array was not inferior to an invincible heavenly saint. "Kill!" With a cold shout, dozens of people swung their fists. In an instant, fist shadows were densely packed. One after another, they flew towards Lin Yi. Every single one of them is a real attack. Frowning, Lin Yi's heart moved. The supreme holy armor appeared and collided with the fist shadows. Bang, bang, bang. Violent energy surged out, but it was easily neutralized by Lin Yi. Just as Lin Yi was about to mock them, A fist suddenly rushed towards Lin Ye's abdomen from an extremely tricky angle. Oomph. Sensing this, Lin Ye clenched his right fist and swung it over. Boom, boom, boom. The fist energy was biting cold. However, when Lin Ye's fist collided with that person's fist, the energy instantly poured out. It was as if a powerful punch had landed on cotton. It was extremely uncomfortable. Swoosh! There was the sound of something breaking through the air. Another 2 rays of biting cold sword chi swung and slashed onto Lin Ye's body. Clang! There was the sound of metal clashing. Lin Ye only felt a huge force coming from his chest. It was as if a huge hammer had hit him. His body immediately flew backwards. Interesting. Frowning slightly, Lin Ye's body spun, and a blazing flame appeared. The fiery red blade swept across the space and slashed onto the crowd. Buzz! However, before the sword chi could land, a screen of light blossomed from the group of people, blocking all the attacks outside the screen of light. The sword chi collided with the light screen, but was absorbed by the light screen. Interesting. This light screen can actually absorb the power of an invincible heavenly saint. But what if it's the power of loss? The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up. He raised the sword chi with both hands and slashed out again. Buzz! The sharp sword chi, mixed with the power of the rule of sword, landed on the light again. Boom! Intense fluctuations erupted. This time, the rule of sword bloomed. It was as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It suddenly cut the light in half. When the light barrier shattered, the group of people immediately suffered a backlash. Their bodies trembled, and they spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Lin Ye stopped and looked at the group indifferently. He did not speak anymore. Clap, clap, clap. There was the sound of applause. The young man clapped his hands and smiled. As expected of a young hero, you have such strength at such a young age. No wonder you're able to come here. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people covered their chests and retreated. However, when they looked at Lin Ye, their eyes were filled with admiration. Apart from the young man, it was the first time they had met a young person who could break their formation. However, it seems that you don't know how to open this relic. That young man's eyes were fixed on Lin Ye, burning with passion. How can that be? Hearing this, Lin Ye shrugged and sneered. If you didn't come, I would have entered the relic. Oh, it seems that you're very confident in yourself. The young man touched his nose and suddenly said, I think you should be Lin Ye from Cebu Gakuen, right? You should be one of the top 10 starry sky geniuses, right? Lin Ye raised his eyebrows. Not to be outdone, he said, Yin Feng, am I right? Ha ha ha. As soon as he finished speaking, the young man laughed out loud. He immediately said, It's refreshing to talk to smart people. Hearing this, Lin Ye could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He had guessed right. Such a young expert with so many experts around him must have a special identity. He did not expect this young man to be Yun Feng, who was ranked first among the top 10 starry sky geniuses. It must be said that the gap between Yun Feng and Helian Yuyin was a little big. Helian Yuyin, Fairy Xuanji, Dao Xian, and the others, although their talents were outstanding, were still juniors after all. However, the feeling that Yun Feng gave Lin Ye was similar to those elders. His strength was extraordinary, and he had many hidden trump cards. Even if he used the law of sword, Lin Ye was not confident that he could defeat Yun Feng. Of course, Lin Ye was not confident that he could defeat Yun Feng, but he was confident that he would not be defeated. No matter what, he was someone who had comprehended the power of law. How could he be defeated so easily? He is Yun Feng? The top 10 starry sky geniuses indeed live up to their reputation. Hearing the conversation between Lin Ye and Yun Feng, Shun Xinyun and Ding Feng Tian were surprised. Since everyone has the same goal, let's go in together. Yun Feng glanced at Lin Ye and said indifferently, That thing may not be obtained by only one person. Hearing this, Lin Ye's heart sank. Yun Feng's expression was so calm. Could it be that he had also comprehended the first volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Taoists? Or could it be that Yun Feng had another way to comprehend the second volume of the 3,000 heavenly Taoists. I wonder what Brother Lin thinks. Just as Lin Yi was feeling bewildered, Yin Feng had already turned his gaze to Lin Yi. Since Brother Yin has said so, how can I refuse? Shrugging his shoulders, Lin Yi's mind moved slightly, and he activated the 3,000 heavenly Taoists, releasing the power of his spiritual sense. So what if Yin Feng was one of the top 10 starry sky geniuses? Lin Yi was confident that he could obtain the approval of the 3,000 heavenly Taoists before Yin Feng. Moreover, although Yin Feng's martial arts were strong, his spiritual sense might not be that strong. Not bad, you really saw through it. Sensing that Lin Yi had summoned his divine sense, Yin Feng chuckled. In the next moment, his divine sense was also released from his body. Buzz! A holy aura filled the air, and in an instant, the entire space began to tremble violently. Rumble! The ruins spun, space distorted, and a powerful force erupted. Suddenly, Lin Yi, Yin Feng, Shen Qingyun, and the others were sucked in. However, the hundreds of experts that Yin Feng had brought were left outside. Chapter 846. When the light dissipated, only a few hundred figures were left around the ruins. The group of people looked at each other and revealed worried looks. That guy is not weak. Moreover, they have a lot of people. Young sect leader should be fine, right? Lin Yi, why does this name sound so familiar? Are you stupid? Lin Yi is the one who killed senior brother Dao Xian. So it's him. If we had known, we would have asked young sect leader to kill him. Sigh. As they sighed, everyone turned their gazes towards the void once more. In their hearts, they trusted Yin Feng very much. The space was distorted and constantly changed. Not long after, Lin Yi and the other three were spat out from the space and landed on the ground. As soon as they landed, Lin Yi looked around and carefully sized up his surroundings. After all, this was a relic and there must be many dangers. You don't have to be so careful. Yin Feng glanced at Lin Yi and said indifferently, I have been here many times. I have already destroyed the mechanisms inside. Now, it is very safe here. If you want to get the volume of the 3,000 skyways, you must pass its test. After speaking, Yin Feng didn't care about Lin Yi anymore. He immediately followed a small path and leisurely walked over. With his hands behind his back, he walked slowly as if he was not prepared at all. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. He was not sure if Yin Feng was telling the truth or not. This guy, what is he up to? Shen Qingyun and Ding Fengtian also stared at Yin Feng in confusion. Normally speaking, as competitors, they should have set up all kinds of traps and traps. When Yin Feng said that, Lin Yi became worried instead. There must be danger in this relic, but it would be difficult to trigger it. However, Lin Yi did not know why, but deep in his heart, he trusted Yin Feng. Even if it was their first meeting, even if Yin Feng was the young sect leader of the Divine Sky sect. Phew, let's follow him. After a long time, Lin Yi gritted his teeth and chose to believe Yin Feng. He quickly followed. Shen Qingyun and Ding Fengtian's expressions changed slightly. They also followed him, but they were very alert and carefully observed their surroundings. Not long after, Lin Yi, Yin Feng, and the other two had already arrived in front of a palace. The radiance of his divine sense enveloped the palace, emitting a gentle glow. Along the way, it was really safe and without any danger. This surprised Shen Qingyun and Ding Fengtian. They didn't expect that Yin Feng really didn't lie to Lin Yi. If you haven't comprehended the 3,000 heavenly Taoists, you won't be able to enter. Yin Feng glanced at Shen Qingyun and Ding Fengtian and said with a smile, You too, I'm afraid you'll have to wait outside obediently. After saying that, Yin Feng immediately stepped into the palace. Buzz! As Yin Feng stepped into the palace, his figure became illusory, like a stream of water. He quickly merged into the radiance and disappeared in front of Lin Yi and the other two. This, Ding Fengtian and Shen Qingyun were shocked and turned to look at Lin Yi. You can only enter this palace after you've comprehended the 3,000 heavenly Taoists. Lin Yi said in a deep voice, Wait for me outside. I'll come out after I've obtained the middle volume of the 3,000 heavenly Taos. Don't worry, I'll definitely help you get rid of the heavenly slaying poison. Huh, of course I believe you. I'm just worried about you. Yun Feng is very powerful and cunning. You'd better be careful. Ding Feng Tian said in a deep voice. I can tell that guy is definitely a sinister person. You can't let your guard down. You can't trust him too much. Don't worry, I'm not a newbie. Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and held Shun Qingyun's hand tightly. Then he turned around, activated the 3,000 heavenly Taos, and stepped into the palace. Buzz. In the next moment, Lin Ye's body became illusory. He felt that his body was extremely soft as he merged into the palace. Slowly, Lin Ye's consciousness became blurry. When Lin Yi woke up again, he was in a strange place. There were many people around him. There was also a huge city with complete facilities. Many people were setting up street stalls. It was as if they were living a peaceful life. However, this peace didn't last long before it was broken. Soon, some people started to destroy the environment in the city. Those people started to quarrel and fight. The strong fluctuations caused the entire city to shake violently. Lin Yi was shocked and wanted to stop the people. However, it was to no avail. In fact, under Lin Ye's persuasion, their riot became even more intense. They all attacked Lin Yi. As more and more people were involved in the riot, the distortion in the space and the city became more and more serious. Something's not right. Realizing this, Lin Yi finally woke up. He should have entered a palace. How could such an illusion appear? Soon, Lin Yi understood that this should be the first test given to him by the 3,000 heavenly Taos. Although Lin Yi already knew that this was a test, he still didn't know how to resolve it. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yi no longer cared about his surroundings. He only activated the 3,000 heavenly Taos. No matter how violent the surroundings were, his state of mind was as calm as water. Drip! The crisp sound of water droplets rang out. When Lin Yi raised his eyes again, he was already in a large hall. The hall wasn't glorious and looked rather ancient. What surprised Lin Yi was that he wasn't alone this time. Yin Feng was also there. Seeing Lin Yi appear, Yin Feng nodded slightly. His eyes were filled with praise. Very clearly, he also did not expect that Lin Yi would actually be able to rush out so quickly. There was an altar in the hall. There were 2 bookshelves on the altar. On each bookshelf, there was a cultivation technique manual. That's the middle volume of the 3,000 heavenly Taos. Suddenly seeing the 2 cultivation technique manuals, Lin Ye's breathing quickened. His eyes narrowed and were filled with joy. He didn't expect to see the middle volume of the 3,000 heavenly Taos so soon. However, Lin Yi soon realized that something was wrong. If those 2 manuals were real, why would Yin Feng be so calm? No, this is still a trap. Noticing this, Lin Ye's heart trembled. He immediately withdrew his mind and sat cross-legged on the spot. Yin Feng was the same. He sat on the ground and didn't move at all. It was as if the 2 manuals on the altar didn't exist at all. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours passed. Lin Yi opened his eyes, but he began to hesitate in his heart. If it was a test, why did it last so long? Could it be that it really was the middle volume of the 3,000 heavenly Taos? End of chapter. Chapter 847. That's not right. There must be something strange about this. Lin Yi, who was about to get up, suddenly thought of the effects of the 3,000 heavenly Taos. Calm of mind. Thinking of this, Lin Yi immediately cleared all the thoughts in his mind. He only sat cross-legged on the ground and allowed everything to develop naturally. He did not care about it all. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years. It seemed to be an eternity, but also seemed to be an instant. Lin Ye's heart suddenly became clear as he opened his eyes. At the same time, Yin Feng, who was sitting beside Lin Yi, also quietly opened his eyes. The 2 of them looked at each other, and the corners of their mouths curled up into a smile. Buzz. Light surged as 2 books of the 3,000 heavenly Taos flew up and landed in Lin Yi and Yun Feng's hands. Phew! I never thought that I would be able to obtain the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Taoists so easily. Holding the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Taoists in his hand, Lin Ye's expression was astonished. He did not dare to believe it at all. The 3,000 Heavenly Taoists that he had been searching for so long had actually been obtained so easily. If it was an ordinary person, it would probably be difficult for them to obtain it in their entire lives. Yin Feng smiled indifferently. Also, aren't you worried that this 3,000 Heavenly Taoist cultivation technique isn't complete? I can sense that this is a complete cultivation technique. Lin Yi sized up Yin Feng and suddenly asked in surprise, I'm curious, aren't you a disciple of the Divine Sky sect? Why are you so polite to me? Do I need a reason? The corner of Yin Feng's mouth curled up as he said in a low voice, I, Yin Feng, never need any reason for my actions, nor will I explain it to others. Ha ha! Amidst the laughter, Yin Feng held the cultivation technique manual in his hand and rushed out of the hall in a flash. Frowning, Lin Yi stood up and followed him out. Before he left, Lin Yi glanced at the corner of his eye and confirmed that there was nothing else in the hall. By the time Lin Yi left, Yin Feng's figure had already swiftly disappeared. No one knew where he had run to. Lin Yi, have you obtained the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Taoists? Seeing Lin Yi come out, Ding Fengtian's breathing quickened as he stared at him. Got it, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. After we get out, when I comprehend the third volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Taoists, your heavenly slaying poison will be cured. Ha ha ha! Awesome! Hearing Lin Ye's answer, Ding Fengtian was overjoyed and burst out laughing. The heavenly slayer poison had been bothering him for a long time. Now that he could finally get rid of it, he was naturally excited. Lin Yi, if you can help me get rid of the heavenly slayer poison, I can help you for a year. Ding Fengtian was so excited that he even promised to sell himself for a year. Of course, Lin Yi would not reject him. He immediately led Ding Fengtian and Shun Xingyan back to where they came from. However, before Lin Yi and the other two could return to where they came from, the entire space started to collapse. Lin Yi's expression changed slightly. He thought that Yin Feng was trying to harm him. He quickly drew the divine inscriptions and stabilized the space. However, very quickly, a crack appeared in the space and suddenly pulled Lin Yi and the other two into it. Only then did they realize that this was the prelude to the closing of the ruins. After a while, Lin Yi, Shun Xingyan, and Ding Fengtian appeared outside the ruins. Rumble. There was a strong vibration. Yin Feng led the group and quickly left the place. Lin Yi and the other two looked around and realized that they were still in the ruins. They immediately let out a long sigh of relief. I want to find a place to start cultivating, Lin Yi said in a low voice. When the time comes, I will have to trouble the two of you to protect me. After cultivating the second volume of the 3,000 Skyways, Lin Yi still had to go to the Holy Moon Divine Sect and the Divine Sky Sect. Time was of the essence, and he did not have much time. Okay. Ding Fengtian was also eager to get rid of the heavenly slaying poison in his body. Without any complaints, he immediately followed Lin Yi to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. After finding a place, Lin Yi opened the Universe Pagoda and entered the ninefold space. The second volume of the 3,000 Skyways could not be compared to the five spirits' divine skill in terms of realm. Therefore, it only took Lin Yi half a year to successfully comprehend the 3,000 Skyways. In an instant, Lin Ye's divine sense power had a qualitative improvement. His divine sense power had completely stabilized from level 70 to level 72. As for the quality of his divine sense power, it was even more terrifying. It was comparable to the five spirits' divine skill. If Lin Yi integrated all of his divine sense power, its quality would be no different from the deity-level divine sense power. That's great. As long as I can get another body, I can be resurrected. Biluo's voice was full of surprise. I didn't expect things to be completed so quickly. The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up as he let out a long sigh of relief. Biluo had recovered, and Lin Yi had collected the second volume of the 3,000 Skyways. In addition to the Lord and the other experts, even if the demons really invaded, Lin Yi would not be worried. With so many experts around, what did Lin Yi have to worry about? After thoroughly integrating the second volume of the 3,000 Skyways, Lin Yi began to cultivate other aspects of martial arts and martial arts cultivation. After the trip to the Five Spirits Divine Ruins and the second volume of the 3,000 Skyways, Lin Yi's divine sense power had improved by leaps and bounds. Although his martial arts had improved greatly compared to his divine sense power, he still needed to work harder. If others knew what Lin Yi was thinking, they would definitely be depressed and hit their heads against the wall. Within a month, his martial arts cultivation had improved from the Great Sage realm to the invincible Heavenly Saint realm. How could this not be fast? After completely stabilizing his realm, Lin Yi exited the 9 layers of space and began to remove the Heavenly Slayer poison for Ding Feng Tian. Although the Heavenly Slayer poison was extremely difficult to treat, in front of the 3,000 Skyways, it was very easy. In just a dozen breaths' time, the Heavenly Slayer poison turned into a puff of white smoke and dissipated into the air. After losing the suppression of the Heavenly Slayer poison and the origin heavenly water that Lin Yi had given him, Ding Fengtian's strength soared rapidly like a rocket. After an hour, although Ding Fengtian had not recovered to the peak of his realm, his strength was comparable to the peak of the lower absolute saint realm. Although he was not as strong as the elders like Flawless White and Theta Scarabii, he was much stronger than the ordinary elders of the inner yard. Ding Fengtian was ecstatic, but he did not forget his promise to follow Lin Yi and protect him for a year. After accepting Ding Fengtian's protection, Lin Yi and the other two quickly rushed to the Saint Moon Heavenly Domain. The Saint Moon Heavenly Domain was one of the 4 great domains and was especially famous. After asking some people, Lin Yi and the other 3 arrived at the gate of the Saint Moon Divine Sect in 2 days. With Ding Fengtian, such a great expert, even the Saint Moon Divine Sect did not dare to be too presumptuous. They quickly went to report. Soon, Lin Yi and the other 3 entered the Saint Moon Divine Sect. End of chapter. Chapter 848. In the main hall of the Holy Moon Divine Sect, dozens of elders gathered together. Their expressions were ugly. Even the Honorable Lord's expression was grave. He didn't dare to relax. However, when Lin Yi arrived, the expressions of the Supremes and the others immediately relaxed. Sensing this, the elders of the Holy Moon Divine Sect couldn't help but be surprised. They were all puzzled. Who exactly was Lin Yi? How could he make the higher-ups of Cebu Gakuen change their expressions? In the main hall, when Helian Yuan heard Lin Yi's name, she became curious. In her opinion, no matter how fast Lin Yi's strength increased, he shouldn't have reached the level of the elders. She was puzzled. Could it be that there was someone called Lin Yi in Cebu Gakuen? Just as everyone was bewildered, the Lin Yi trio had already arrived at the large hall under the lead of a couple of figures. In an instant, all the elders and core disciples in the hall turned to look at Lin Yi. What a young man. He's Lin Yi, the one who made the elders change their expressions. When everyone saw Lin Yi's appearance, they were all shocked and stood rooted to the ground. Especially Helian Yuan. Her mouth was wide open as she looked at Lin Yi in shock. She couldn't believe that an ordinary outer yard disciple could make the elders and honorable lords treat him with respect. Honorable Lord, elders. Lin Yi stepped forward and bowed respectfully. It's good that you're here. The Honorable Lord sized up Lin Yi with a meaningful look in his eyes. With his strength, how could he not see that Lin Yi had improved again? Time is of the essence. Let's not waste time and go straight to the passage. As he spoke, the Lord extended his hand toward the young woman beside him. The young woman was still sizing up Lin Yi. She only reacted when she saw the High Lord reaching out his hand. She chuckled and said, Hua Wuya, is this the little guy you mentioned who can seal the passage? Not bad. The High Lord nodded. Lin Yi replied, I was just lucky enough to come across some opportunities. That's how I found the method to seal the passage. All right, we'll be counting on you this time. The young woman chuckled and hurried to the back of the palace with the high lords and the others. A group of nearly 100 people walked through the passage in a grandiose manner, rushing towards the teleportation array. Hellion Yin quietly stepped forward and walked to Lin Ye's side. She continuously sized him up, her eyes filled with bewilderment. Sensing Hellion Yin's arrival, Shen Yin pursed her lips and stared at her nervously, as if guarding against a thief. Little girl, don't worry. I don't have that kind of intention. Hellion Yin covered her mouth and laughed. She looked at Lin Yi and said, Little guy, what kind of medicine did you take? Why are you so strong? How did you break through so quickly? I didn't take any medicine. Lin Yi glanced at Hellion Yin and said indifferently, It's just that your speed of improvement is too slow. I saw Yin Feng a few days ago. His strength is even stronger than mine. What? You saw Yin Feng? Hellion Yin's expression suddenly turned serious when she heard Yin Feng's name. Sensing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. As expected, Yin Feng was Hellion Yin's nemesis. Yes, Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and said in a low voice, Moreover, he has obtained the third scroll of the 3,000 heavenly ways. I estimate that his strength will increase once again. When that time comes, it will be very difficult for you to catch up to him. How is that possible? Hellion Yin waved her fist, but suddenly reacted. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Lin Yi. Little guy, how do you know about Yin Feng? You haven't even seen Yin Feng. How can you know him? I know you are lying to me. Lin Yi sighed and said, It's fine if you don't believe me. Hellion Yin was depressed when she heard this. She hoped that Lin Yi was not lying to her. While Hellion Yin was hesitating, the group did not slow down. They kept thinking about the direction of the teleportation formation. As they got closer to the teleportation formation, a strange force spread out and affected the group. Some of the weaker elders had already used their saint power to isolate themselves from the aura. This demonic qi seems to be stronger than before. Lin Ye's face instantly turned serious when he sensed the strange aura. The stronger the demonic qi, the closer the sky market world was to them. At that time, even with the lost formation, it would be difficult to seal it. Fortunately, it wasn't very difficult to seal those passageways now. Let's go speed up. Otherwise, something unexpected will happen. Sensing the change in the demonic qi, the honorable lords and the other top powers also felt that something was wrong and quickly increased their speed. Not long after, there was gradually a black qi in the surroundings. However, before the black qi could attack, it was taken away by the top powers. In less than a quarter of an hour, Lin Yi and the rest had already appeared on a huge lotus. However, at this time, the lotus was blooming with a black light, which was especially terrifying. Without hesitation, Lin Yi let go of Shen Qingyun's hand, took a step forward, put his palms together, and waved them continuously. In the next moment, the lost formation appeared and suddenly covered the black lotus. After the upgrade of the 3,000 heavenly ways, Lin Ye's control over the power of his spiritual sense had become stronger. In less than 10 breaths, he had sealed the black lotus. In an instant, the black qi dissipated and the lotus returned to its green color. The strange force within was like white snow, disappearing without a trace. Oh my God, he actually sealed the passageway. Too terrifying. His strength is simply shocking. Seeing this scene, the people who had seen Lin Yi for the first time were extremely shocked. In particular, there were many female disciples in the Holy Moon Divine sect. Lin Yi was also very handsome. In an instant, many female disciples kept casting flirtatious glances at Lin Yi. Sensing this, Shen Qingyun was extremely nervous. She quickly grabbed Lin Ye's hand, as if she wanted to pull him away at any time. Of course, Lin Yi didn't want to continue staying here. After chatting with the young woman for a while, Lin Yi bid farewell to the Honorable Lord and prepared to go to the Divine Sky sect. Flawless White was still in the Divine Sky sect. It was reasonable for Lin Yi to make a trip there. The honorable lord naturally wouldn't refuse. Therefore, Lin Yi and the rest quickly left the Holy Moon Divine Sect. Just as they were about to leave the Holy Moon Divine Sect, Helian Yien's figure appeared at the side. I say, you guys aren't going to fly over directly, right? Helian Yien glanced at Lin Yi in annoyance. Suddenly, she smiled and said, Little guy, why don't we make a deal? Oh, what deal? Hearing this, Lin Yi's interest was immediately piqued. End of chapter. Chapter 849. If you tell me about Yin Feng, I can bring you to the Divine Sky Sect quickly. How about that? The corners of Helian Yu Yan's mouth curled up as she looked at Lin Yi with a smile. TSK, you want to see Yin Feng so badly? Lin Yi glanced at Helian Yu Yan strangely. In an instant, she blushed and said softly, It's none of your business. Just tell me if you agree or not. Of course I agree. Why not? Lin Yi shrugged and agreed immediately. Just telling her about Yin Feng could save him a lot of trouble. Why not? At this moment, Shun Xingyun could tell that Helian Yu Yin liked Yin Feng very much. She was no longer worried about Helian Yu Yin, and her attitude became much more amiable. Lin Yi was surprised by this. Deal. With a smile, Helian Yin brought Lin Yi and arrived at the area 100 miles away from the Divine Sky Sect through the teleportation formation. After landing, Lin Yi and the other two were about to get up, but were stopped by Helian Yu Yin. Hey, you haven't told me about Yin Feng. Helian Yu Yin showed a rare girly side and pouted. Are you trying to lie to me? Why would I lie to you? The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He looked around and found that there was no one around. He sat down and began to explain to Helian Yu Yin what had happened. Helian Yu Yin was fascinated, especially when she found out that Yin Feng had obtained the second scroll of the 3,000 heavenly ways and his strength would soar again. She was in high spirits and would think that she had made a breakthrough herself. After he finished, Helian Yu Yin still wanted to continue. However, before she could pull Lin Yi to continue, a strong sound broke through the air and reverberated in everyone's ears. Who is it? Suddenly feeling the violent fluctuation of saint energy, Lin Yi, Helian Yu Yin, and the others' faces changed. They quickly got up and looked up. They saw a dark mass of people rushing towards them. There seems to be something wrong with their auras. Ding Fengtian had already regained the strength of an absolute saint. He sensed it and hurriedly said, Oh no, the aura in their bodies is demonic. What? Has the passage to the divine heaven gate already been opened by the demons? Upon hearing Ding Fengtian's words, Lin Ye's expression changed dramatically. He immediately spread out the power of his divine sense to sense the source. At the same time, they retreated rapidly. If that black mass of shadows were all demonized spirit beasts or humans, then they would be in danger. Swish, swish. However, before Lin Ye's group could retreat much, the group of black figures charged over at an extremely fast speed. As they neared, Lin Yi and the rest were finally able to clearly see that there were a couple of familiar figures at the front of the group of black figures. Elder Bai, the person at the front, was flawless white. After taking a closer look, Lin Yi instantly cried out. His heart was filled with shock. After all, Flawless White's strength was one of the best among the absolute saints. However, at this moment, he was in such a sorry state. This showed how powerful the group of black figures were. Lin Yi, you're finally here. Upon hearing Lin Ye's voice, Flawless White's gaze swept over. He also saw Lin Yi and the rest. He was instantly excited. He quickly sped up and charged toward Lin Ye's group. Swish, swish, swish. Behind Flawless White, the black figures changed direction and landed at the same time. However, before they landed, Shun Qingyun had already leaped up and slashed out with her saber. Dazzling saber chi, as she shouted coldly. The sharp saber chi pierced through the air and spun toward the black aura. Boom, boom, boom. The saber chi was biting cold. It swept past Flawless White and collided with the black aura. In the next moment, the saber chi turned horizontally and sliced the sky in half. Sensing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked. He suddenly realized that the black aura was very weak. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been unable to withstand a single slash from Shun Qingyun. At this thought, Lin Yi didn't hold back anymore. With a slight thought, the power of his divine consciousness transformed into a giant bird covered in flames. Screech! The giant bird flapped its wings and soared into the sky. The flames on its outstretched arms burned fiercely. Beep, beep, beep. The flames burned fiercely. Almost as soon as the black aura appeared, it was completely burned into nothingness by the flames. Phew! Seeing that the black aura chasing after him had disappeared, Flawless White let out a long sigh of relief. Elderby, what's wrong with you? Lin Yi frowned and looked at Flawless White in confusion. I was ambushed. I couldn't even use 1/10 of my strength. If I hadn't met you guys, I'm afraid I would have been swallowed alive by the black aura. Flawless White laughed bitterly. It was my mistake. I didn't expect that when I came here, the passageway of the Divine Sky Sect was already undefended. Even the sect leader of the Divine Sky Sect had been corroded. At that time, he disguised himself so well that I didn't realize it. That's why I was ambushed. Speaking of this, Flawless White couldn't help but sigh. He clenched his fists and was extremely furious. He was, after all, a top expert of his generation. In the end, he was ambushed and swallowed by the black aura of a group of ants. That was just too ridiculous. Hiss! The entire Divine Sky Sect has been swallowed? Hearing Flawless White's words before Lin Yi could say anything, Helian Yun blurted out, "How is Yin Feng now? Is he still safe?" Yin Feng, Flawless White frowned and said in a deep voice, "Yesterday, I just saw him return. There wasn't any demonic aura in his body. However, he's going to meet the sect leader today. I'm afraid he'll be killed. Oh no." Hearing Flawless White's words, Helian Yun's expression changed drastically. She quickly turned her head and looked at Lin Yi. She bit her lips and said, "Brother Lin, can you accompany me to the Divine Sky Sect?" "No." Shun Qingyun immediately said, "The Divine Sky Sect has been occupied by the demons. It's too dangerous. We can't go there." Lin Yi's brows furrowed slightly as he exchanged a glance with Helian Yun. There was actually a special fluctuation in his heart. He had a premonition that if he didn't save Yin Feng, it might be his lifelong regret. However, just like what Shun Qingyun had said, the Divine Sky Sect was filled with evil creatures. They might not be creatures that had been corroded by the demonic aura. Even the demons had come. If Lin Yi and the rest rushed over, they would only be courting death. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "Miss Helian, don't be rash. We have to save Yin Feng, but we have to think of a foolproof plan. If we continue thinking, I'm afraid Yin Feng will become a demon." Clenching her fists, Helian Yun suddenly turned around. She stepped on the void and sped towards the Divine Sky Sect. In a chapter. Chapter 850. Sigh. With a cry of surprise, Lin Yi hurriedly got up. However, Helian Yun's strength was also not weak. Under her full-speed gallop, how many people in Lin Yi's group could stop her? Moreover, when Flawless White was injured earlier, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Ding Fengtian were all taking care of Flawless White. They had no time to care about Helian Yun. Sigh. Why is this fellow so impulsive? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched, and he could not help but punch the ground. It's not like we're not going to save Yin Feng. No, it's too dangerous there. I can't let her go alone. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Senior Shun, Senior Ding, take care of Elderby first. When you've recovered some of your strength, go find Miss Helian and me. Perhaps we can work together." Lin Yi rubbed his nose and did not hold back. He took out the origin source heavenly water and sprinkled it on Flawless White. In an instant, the demonic chi in Flawless White's body was digested at an extremely fast speed. After a while, Flawless White's strength recovered a little. He hurriedly circulated his cultivation method and worked with the origin source heavenly water to purify the demonic chi. Lu Chanfeng nodded slightly when he saw this scene. He was quite satisfied. At this speed, Flawless White would recover most of his strength in a few minutes. Senior Shun, Senior Ding, you two guard first. Lin Yi nodded slightly and looked at each other. He also tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rushed toward the Divine Heaven sect. In order to catch up to Hellion Yuyin, Lin Yi did not hold back at all. Soon, Hellion Yuyin's figure appeared in Lin Ye's line of sight. Hellion Yuyin also sensed Lin Ye's arrival. However, she thought that Lin Yi was there to dissuade her. Her expression changed slightly, and she immediately increased her speed. Miss Hellion, don't run. Let's go together. Seeing this, Lin Ye's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Hellion Yuyin's strength was not weak. If she went all out, Lin Yi would not be able to catch up to her in a short period of time. At that time, it was very likely that they would run into the people in the Divine Heaven sect who had been corroded by the demonic qi. If they alerted the enemy, it would be troublesome. Whoosh! Hearing Lin Ye's words, Hellion Yuyin finally stopped. She turned to look at Lin and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure you won't stop me? Are you here to help me?" Nonsense! The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched as he sighed. If I didn't want to help you, why would I risk my life to come here? That's true. Slightly nodding her head, Hellion Yuyin said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." However, Yin Feng is still in the Divine Heaven sect. He could encounter danger at any time. We have to speed up. Okay, I'll do my best to save your lover. Lin Yi gritted his teeth and brought Hellion Yin along to sneak into the Divine Heaven sect. Hellion Yuyin, as one of the top 10 Starry Sky geniuses, had been to the Divine Heaven sect many times. Therefore, she was familiar with the Divine Heaven sect. In addition, both of them were at a high level and had high attainments in concealing their auras. There was no need to worry. Soon, Lin Yi and Hellion Yuyin sneaked into Yun Feng's personal courtyard. However, there were only a few hundred guards who had been corroded by the demonic qi. As for Yun Feng's aura, he was not in the courtyard at all. It seems like Yun Feng has escaped. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and said softly, "He is very strong. If he wants to escape, no one can stop him. No, let's look carefully." However, Hellion Yuyin pursed her lips tightly. In such a situation, it was possible for him to escape, but it was also possible for him to be killed. Hellion Yuyin was worried about Yun Feng. She would not make a hasty decision. Okay, seeing that Hellion Yuyin was so determined, Lin Yi had no choice but to let Hellion Yuyin continue to search. Rumble. Bang. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky, and there was a violent flash of lightning. Boom! The surrounding houses all collapsed. A figure broke through the air and flew out directly. Cough, cough. In the air, the figure spat out a mouthful of blood. Yin Feng. Hellion Yin glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and cried out in surprise. She quickly flew forward and hugged the young man. Lin Yi turned his head and took a closer look. The corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. That figure was Yin Feng. However, at this time, Yin Feng was in a slightly sorry state, lying in Hellion Yuyin's arms. She can even see that. She is indeed Hellion Yuyin. Lin Yi was shocked, but his gaze turned to the distance. Boom, boom, boom. Violent energy erupted. Black qi surged, and a huge figure quietly appeared. It's a human who has been completely eroded by the demon qi. His eyes turned cold. Lin Ye's heart was bitingly cold, and he hurriedly shouted, "Miss Hellion, leave quickly. This demon is not something that we can easily deal with." Okay, since she found Yin Feng, Hellion Yuyin would not show off. She carried Yin Feng and ran at an extremely fast speed. That speed shocked Lin Yi. Roar! Die, you bastard! However, the huge figure exploded with a roar. It suddenly leaped up and waved its hands. Two huge black-colored palms were already slapping towards Hellion Yuyin and Yin Feng. Seeing this, Lin Shui's mind moved slightly, and the power of his divine sense suddenly burst out, suddenly pushing Hellion Yuyin and Yin Feng away. At the same time, Lin Ye's body was like an agile fish as he quickly leaped out. In just a few breaths' time, The three of them had already rushed out of the divine heaven gate. At this time, Yin Feng also reacted. He glanced at Lin Yi and Helian Yin and said softly, "This time, thank you for your help. Don't talk. We haven't escaped yet." Lin Yi glared at Yin Feng fiercely. Immediately, he increased his speed and rushed towards the place where they came from. Cough, cough. Helian Yin carried Yin Feng, and her speed was not any slower than Lin Yi's. Boom, boom, boom. Behind them, a huge figure was like a cannonball that was shot out of the barrel. It was extremely ferocious. It was also chasing Lin Yi and the other two closely. Swoosh! Very quickly, another three figures rushed over. However, when Lin Yi saw the three figures, his expression changed slightly. He hurriedly shouted, "Let's go." Suddenly hearing Lin Yi's words, Shun Qing Yun, Ding Feng Tian, and flawless white glance from the corner of their eyes. When they saw the huge figure, their faces changed drastically and they immediately turned around. Roar! However, it was already too late. The huge beast seemed to have been completely enraged. It suddenly leaped up and spun its body, transforming into two huge black claws. It fiercely slapped towards Lin Yi and the others. One of the sharp blades flickered with a dim light and suddenly pierced towards Yun Feng's head. No! A shrill scream sounded. In the next moment, Helian Yun's body twisted and actually used her waist to get close to the sharp blade. End of chapter. Baidu, search 81, Chinese Networko. No advertising message. Chapter 851. Bang! Poochie! The sharp blade pierced through the air and pierced into Helian Yun's waist. In the next moment, a surge of energy was released, sending Helian Yun and Yun Feng flying. Hurry up and leave. Lin Yi was shocked and hurriedly ordered everyone to retreat. He turned around and drew a line with his index finger. The power of the divine pattern bloomed, and the space suddenly distorted. Bang! The giant beast collided with the distorted space, and in the next moment, its body actually changed. Black gas filled the air, and the giant figure condensed. The black gas turned into two giant arms, and 6 silver-white eyes appeared on its head, shining brightly. He. I didn't expect that there would be someone in this world who understood the power of the divine pattern. Looking at Lin Yi's back, the 6-eyed demon's eyes flashed with a cold light. It sneered, "Interesting, it seems that conquering this world is not that easy. Wait until my emperor descends. This world will become my race's breeding ground." Ha ha ha. As its laughter fell, the 6-eyed demon's shoulders shook, and a huge amount of black gas burst out from its body. A pair of wings appeared, and it flapped its wings and flew high, disappearing from this world in an instant. 500 miles away, after Helian Yin was injured, Lin Yi and the others rushed forward with all their strength. They carried Helian Yin and flew for a few hundred miles. When they turned around and saw that the demon did not chase after them, they sighed in relief. "Miss Helian, are you all right?" However, after putting Helian Yin down, Lin Yi and the others' expressions became more and more serious. Helian Yin's body was covered in black gas, and her face was deathly pale. There was no trace of blood, and the life in her body was completely cut off. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi dripped a few drops of origin source heavenly water. The result was disappointing. The origin source heavenly water, which had always been effective, did not even cause a splash. How can this be? Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi hurriedly called for Biluo. "Lin Yi, she's hopeless." Biluo's voice faintly sounded. "If you want to save her, there's only one way." "What is it?" Hearing this, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. "That method might even kill me," Biluo said helplessly. "But if we succeed, both of us will survive." "You mean to say that you borrowed her body to resurrect? But in that case, what about her soul?" Lin Yi's brows furrowed slightly as he felt extremely puzzled. "It's simple. Fuse her soul with mine," Biluo said helplessly. "Right now, other than me, her spiritual body, There is no one else who can save her. But if that's the case, wouldn't you be using the same soul as her? Lin Yi felt a chill in his heart. He felt that it was a little unfair to Biluo. Heh, he's your friend after all. Furthermore, sharing the same soul is better than being unable to revive at all. Biluo said in a deep voice, "Hurry up and make your decision. Right now, we don't have much time. The demons have already invaded the four heavens and will launch their attack very soon. You have to find the last part of the Divine Sword Constitution or the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Tao before they launch their attack. Otherwise, no one can stop the might of the demons." Hearing this, Lin Ye's face couldn't help but turn ugly. "Then what should I do?" Lin Yi asked in a deep voice. "Put me and Hellion Yin together and use the Lost Array to solidify our souls. You don't have to worry about anything else. You better make a trip back to the Sky Sea realm. There are many things that you haven't completely grasped. In addition, you have to learn the last part of the Divine Sword Constitution or the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Tao. Otherwise, you won't have any advantage against the army of demons." All right, Biluo had never made a mistake in her words before. Hence, Lin Yi trusted her very much. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi told Biluo's method to Yun Feng and the rest. They all chose to believe in Lin Yi. Hence, they carefully placed Hellion Yun's body in a rather secret place. After chasing Yun Feng and the rest out, Lin Yi summoned Biluo's soul and immediately used a secret technique to fuse Biluo's and Hellion Yun's souls together. In the next moment, the Lost Array appeared and suddenly enveloped them. After finishing all the preparations, Lin Yi made some precautions and prepared to leave. Of course, Shun Qingyun and the rest were here to guard Hellion Yun's body. Lin Yi, who felt that the task was heavy, first returned to Cebu Gakuan and handed the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Tao to Qin Daoxian. He chose to leave and rush to the Sky Sea realm. Although the Sky Sea realm was a small place, it contained a huge secret. Many of the treasures on Lin Ye's body were obtained from the Sky Sea realm, and until now, they had not been completely revealed, including the Divine Dragon 9 transformations. Even with Lin Ye's extraordinary talent and the help of Biluo and the rest, he had only cultivated to the Nirvana Divine Dragon transformation. This time, Lin Yi did not alarm anyone when he returned to the Sky Sea realm. He only walked the same path as before and comprehended some existences. In the Divine Dragon Palace, Lin Yi returned once again. However, he was surprised to find that there were many things missing in the palace and that he could no longer communicate with the Divine Dragon. There are also many places that Lin Yi walked through. When Lin Yi walked through the entire Sky Sea realm, his aura actually increased an extremely fast speed and perfectly fused together. With a single step, Lin Ye's realm had already broken through from invincible heavenly saint to upper absolute saint. In fact, he was only one step away from the final Saint King realm. In fact, after one's cultivation broke through to the heavenly saint realm, the most important thing was no longer the saint power, but the comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth. Lin Yi already had an extremely deep understanding of the laws. In addition to the existence of auspicious signs and the chaotic divine tree, it was not difficult for him to comprehend the Tao overnight and break through to upper absolute saint. After a moment of enlightenment, Lin Yi already understood Biluo's thoughts. With a sigh, he wandered the divine continent and began to search for the existence of the Divine Sword Constitution and the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Tao. This search lasted for 10 years. In 10 years, many things happened in the Divine Continent. The demons infiltrated through the Divine Heaven Gate and Juyo Dragon School's teleportation array and gradually devoured many humans, turning them into demon soldiers and preparing to welcome the arrival of the Demon Emperor. Of course, Cebu Gakuan and the Holy Moon Divine Sect would not sit idly by. They united the other forces of the Divine Continent and all the families to resist the expansion of the demons. In this way, the speed of the demons' expansion suddenly slowed down. However, the demons were able to invade so many planets and worlds, so they were definitely not stupid. They quickly began to sow discord and divide the alliance. In an instant, their expansion took another step forward. In the 8th year, the demons had already expanded their forces to 2 heavens and even many towns. In the 9th year, the demons built thousands of altars in the divine continent and connected them, preparing to summon the demon emperor. In a chapter. Chapter 852. How could the people of the divine land allow the demon emperor to descend? Immediately, a battle was about to break out. Almost every altar had become a place that had to be fought over. Countless amounts of blood had been spilled. In these 10 years, Hellion Yuyin had already recovered and merged perfectly with Biluo. Not only did she have the memories of both of them, but she also had Biluo's strength. If not for Biluo, the Divine Land would not have been able to resist for so long. Cebu Gakuin, Holy Moon Divine Sect, and many other disciples played a huge role. Those talented disciples, under the threat of death, broke through at an extremely fast speed. In just a few years, they had the strength to contend with the demons. As for Yunfeng, his speed of growth was even more shocking. He comprehended the Tao and broke through to the Sage King realm, becoming one of the top powerhouses in the Divine Land. Even people at the level of supremacy might not be his match. Putting aside the struggle between the Devil Tribe and the Divine Land, Lin Yi had finally found the last part of the Celestial Sword Divine Body and spent 2 years to completely integrate it. His strength broke through to the Sage King realm with the help of the Sword Law. After breaking through to the Sage King realm, Lin Yi was worried that he was not strong enough, so he searched for the 3,000 heavenly ways for another 2 years. Unfortunately, there was still no news. After 10 years, the battle between the demons and the Divine Land became more and more dangerous. Lin Yi could no longer hide from the world. It was also at this time that the Divine Land's resistance finally reached its limit. Even though they paid the price of countless blood, they still could not stop 1,000 altars from connecting and starting the ritual to summon the Demon Emperor. Rumble, 1,000 altars, shaped like a round wheel, bloomed with radiance. After they connected, dazzling lightning continued to strike, and purplish black light reflected in the surroundings, reflecting each other's brilliance. Crackle, boom! The sound of thunder suddenly rang out, and suddenly, a huge silver-white crack appeared in the sky. Kacha! Kacha! Crisp sounds continued to ring out, and the silver-white crack gradually expanded. In the end, it became a huge spatial crack. Boom! Almost at the instant the spatial crack appeared, a huge foot stretched out. Soon after, his ankles, calves, thighs, and his upper body, arms, and head were all revealed. That figure was somewhat similar to a human. However, it had sharp teeth and a pair of purple-black wings on its back. Its 10 fingers were sharp like hooks, and there was a small tail on its waist. Don't be fooled by its cute form. The moment it appeared, all the demons in the sky knelt down on one knee and kowtowed to it. Welcome to the Divine Land, Your Majesty. Welcome to the Divine Land, Your Majesty. Respectful salutes were heard as the Demon Emperor descended. He flapped his wings and landed on the ground. Ha ha ha! So this is the Divine Land. This is a good place. From today onwards, this will be the palace of Demon King Gallus. Ha ha! Laughing loudly, the Demon Emperor spread his wings. In an instant, an endless rain of fire fell from the sky and smashed onto the ground. Rumble! Not only the place where the Demon Emperor was, but every corner of the Divine Land had a fiery rain of meteors falling. Boom! 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 The meteors fell like the end of the world. When they hit the ground, they exploded with a powerful force and created a huge abyss. However, this was only the beginning. In the deep abyss, purple-black liquid flowed out of the meteors. The moment the purple-black liquid touched the ground, the saint power in the ground was contaminated and eroded into demon chi. The purple-black gas continued to rise from the ground. In just a dozen breaths, The area within 100 feet of the area hit by the meteors had turned into demon soil. Purple flowers bloomed, and vines wrapped around the ground, absorbing the remaining life essence in the depths of the earth. Oh no, these meteors will absorb and devour the life essence of the divine land. We can't let them fall unharmed. Soon, Yun Feng, the Reverend, and the others noticed this. They called for the experts above the absolute saint realm to resist the meteors. However, there were too few true experts in the divine land. Only a few people could resist the meteors. In the end, in the entire divine land, only the Saint Moon heavenly domain and the Sky Billow true domain were left. The rest of the land had turned into demon soil. It was fine for a short period of time, but if humans stayed in demon soil for a long time, they would be eroded by the demon chi. In an instant, everyone in the divine land was in danger. They knew that if they couldn't get rid of the demon emperor, they wouldn't have much time left. Therefore, Yun Feng, Biluo, the Reverend, and many absolute saint realm elders attacked the demon emperor's palace together. In other places, everyone in the divine land was filled with courage. Even if they died, they would bring trouble to the demons. In the demon emperor's palace, Gallus looked at the hundreds of absolute saints and several saint kings and laughed loudly. You want to fight me? You're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I'll give you one last chance. If you're willing to be my clan, I'll protect you. Kill. No matter how tempting Gallus was, everyone's heart was filled with killing intent. Everyone unleashed their strongest power and charged towards Gallus. Boom, boom. Wave after wave of saint power attacks and divine consciousness pressure crashed onto Gallus's body one after another. However, it was completely unscathed. On the contrary, every time it waved its hand, it could heavily injure a person, causing them to fall to the ground and vomit blood. Only the Reverend, Biluo, Yun Feng, and a few others could exchange a few blows with Gallus. Boom, boom, boom. Bloodthirsty dance. With a cold shout, Gallus waved his hands and actually conjured several dozen blood-red phantoms. He suddenly slapped Biluo, Yun Feng, and the exalted lord away. The violent power tore their defense apart in an instant. Ha ha! I've told you that you can't kill me with your strength. Gallus laughed and raised his right hand. His 10 sharp claws turned into a sharp blade and stabbed toward Biluo's head. You seem to have a shocking power in your body. Since that's the case, let me have a taste. The sharp blade pierced through the air and stabbed toward Biluo at an extremely fast speed. Instantly, everyone turned their heads away. They couldn't bear to look at it. Even Biluo closed her eyes. Clang! However, when the strong wind blew, what rang in everyone's ears was a clear sound. End of chapter. Baidu search 81 Chinese Websidio. No advertising message. Chapter 853. Clang. The sound of metal clashing rang in everyone's ears. What's going on? I'm fine. Soon, the crowd raised their heads in shock, only to see a figure floating in the air. Silver-white holy light sprinkled down like a rain of angels, healing everyone's injuries at an extremely fast speed. The light screen surrounded Biluo and the others. For a moment, only one figure was left standing in front of the Demon King. Who are you? Kneel down before the Demon King. Many demons shouted in unison, which shocked Lin Yi. However, they miscalculated. With Lin Yi's strength, he was immune to such psychological warfare. Who are you? The Demon King stared at Lin Yi. For some reason, he had an ominous feeling the moment he saw Lin Yi. I'm the one who will kill you. With a sigh, Lin Yi's body flashed and turned into a sharp longsword. Then, he pierced through the body of Demon Emperor Gallus at an extremely fast speed. Gallus did not expect this at all. His demon heart was pierced through by the rule of sword and shattered. He could no longer be resurrected. Bang! 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 Gallus' body exploded, and so did the 1,000 altars on the divine land. No! How is this possible? Demon King! In an instant, many demons were shocked. They could not believe that the Demon King, who had god-level strength, was pierced through the heart by a sword just like that. It's your turn now. Lin Yi raised his hand. In an instant, all the sword chi in the world followed Lin Yi's command and condensed into long swords, piercing through the hearts of all the demons. In the divine land, many meteorites and altars shattered. The demonized land slowly returned to normal. Ha 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 ha. Lin Yi, I knew you would come back. It's really you. Seeing that Lin Yi had killed the Demon King, everyone had mixed feelings. However, they were all very glad. Fortunately, the divine land was not conquered by the demons. Shen Xinyan rushed out and jumped into Lin Yi's arms. But soon, Lin Yi put her down and walked to Biluo. To be more precise, he walked to Biluo and Helian Yuyan's shared body. Looking at Biluo, Lin Yi frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Looking down, Lin Yi's expression immediately became serious. A sharp dagger pierced Lin Yi's abdomen. What's going on? Biluo, what are you doing? Seeing this scene, the crowd was greatly shocked, and all of them were shocked. They already knew Biluo's identity and knew that Biluo and Lin Yi had gone through thick and thin together. Therefore, they did not expect Biluo to attack Lin Yi. Everyone was anxious. Just as they were about to step forward, they were enveloped by a light screen and froze on the spot. Pucci! The blade spun, and Lin Yi trembled. He spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at Biluo. Phew, should I call you Tianyin or Yun? I didn't expect that even after I reincarnated, you would still be scheming against me. Lin Yi looked at the woman with a calm expression. At this moment, he had figured everything out. All of this was Biluo's, or Tianyun's, conspiracy. As for the array that connected the sky market world to the divine land, it was also her doing. Oof, you haven't handed over your last treasure. How can I let you off so easily? Tianyin looked coldly at Lin Yi and said in a low voice, Don't worry, I have already done something to the divine sword constitution. You can't completely integrate with the divine sword constitution, so you are no match for me. If you don't want to die, hand over the creation's sword heart. As expected, Lin Yi shook his head slightly and suddenly sighed. Tianyun, you have schemed so much, but there is one thing that you will never be able to calculate. Oh? Tianyun sneered. In this world, there is nothing that I can't calculate? Is that so? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up. He turned his neck and looked at Yun Feng with a smile in his eyes. Buzz. In the next moment, Yun Feng also smiled. He stepped across the light screen and walked to Lin Yi's side. Swoosh! Lin Yi and Yun Feng came into contact, and there was a dazzling radiance. In the next moment, they became one person. Boom, boom, boom. Sharp sword intent soared to the sky. The aura in Lin Yi's body rose at an extremely fast speed. What? You actually reincarnated the soul of the divine sword constitution into a human. Noticing this, Tianyun's pupils suddenly constricted. An ominous premonition suddenly emerged in her heart. Not only that, Lin Yi turned his head again and looked at Shen Xinyan. Boom! Saber intent soared to the sky and collided with the sword intent. There was actually the sound of a dragon and a phoenix contending. Damn it, this is the dragon and phoenix body forging. How did you set up these means? Seeing this scene, Tianyun's heart was in complete despair. Boom! His aura rose rapidly. Lin Yi's strength quickly surpassed the holy ruler realm and reached the god realm. Clang! Virtually the instant Lin Yi became a god, the dagger that pierced into his abdomen shattered, turning into fragments that filled the sky. Tianyun, go in peace. Everything that you have given me in these 2 lifetimes, I will take it back. As soon as his indifferent voice fell, Lin Yi reached out and pointed his index finger at Tianyun's forehead. Buzz! In an instant, the sword chi whistled and rushed into Tianyun's forehead abruptly, completely destroying her soul that was related to Biluo. As for Helian Yuyan's soul, it was intact. Boom, boom, boom. The aura of a deity appeared, as if he was the creator. The moment he appeared, Everything in the world that was perfect was being reconstructed. Crackle, crackle. Suddenly, lightning appeared. Countless lightning bolts fell and formed a long bridge that was completely condensed by lightning. The long bridge went straight to the sky. When everyone looked up, they all understood in their hearts. Obviously, that sky was going to be a brand new world. However, that world could only be reached by a small number of people. Phew, what a waste. Linny shook his head and clenched his right hand. In the next instant, all the lightning bolts shattered and turned into pure energy that scattered in all directions. It was as if time and space were being reconstructed, restoring everything in this world. At the peak of Sky Mountain, hundreds of people stood in great numbers. Every one of them had the strength of an absolute saint. The person at the front was Lin Yi. Behind him were Luo Bingyue, Shun Qingyun, and the other girls. They were all competing with each other to attract everyone's attention. Helian Yiyan was also among them. However, she did not dare to speak. She carefully followed behind Lin Yi. Lin Yi, congratulations on entering a brand new realm. From now on, you have to walk your own path. We can't give you any help. We only have one thing to say. Take care. Ha ha ha. Elders, juniors, only have one thing to say. I, Lin Yi, will create another great cause. When I return, the divine land will soar. In a chapter that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.